So hello everyone and welcome to this new ESO Cosmic Duologue. My name is Henri Boffin and I'm an astronomer at ESO and I will moderate this duologue. So before we start, let me first thank my colleague Giacomo Beccari for his great work in the organization of these duologues and for being in the background today. Just a reminder about the format of those events. So we will have two speakers who will each give very short 20 minutes or so talks. And after that, we will invite questions from the audience. So feel free to post your questions at any time in the YouTube chat window, and we'll try to ask this to our speakers. If you cannot post your question there, feel free to use the form, which is available on the ESO Cosmic Duologue webpage, which is at duo.eso.org. And feel free, of course, also to post any comments or reactions in the YouTube chat during the event itself. So we try to keep this very lively. So today the topic of a duologue is a little bit different from what we usually do. Indeed, we are not going to address one astronomical question this time. We are going to talk about something that is affecting all astronomers, and that is the way that we publish papers. So as you may know, we are now entering a new era with a strong push from the European Commission, but also from many major funders to make sure that all scientific papers are made available at no cost to everyone and in a way that everyone can also use these papers. This is what is called open access. Whether we agree with this or not, I'm afraid doesn't matter anymore, as the policies are basically already in place. However, this is not the time when the journals will have to adapt their publishing model. And if we don't want to have to accept what they will decide in their corner, this is not the time for us as a community to tell the publisher what we would prefer. So today's duologue is entitled Open Access in Astronomy, Why Should I Care? And our speakers today are Uta Grotkov and Anne Ruimi. Uta is the head librarian at ESO, and she will just present the point of view of the astronomical librarians. And Anne is senior publisher at EDP Science, which is the publisher, among others, of astronomy and astrophysics. And so she will be presenting the view from another side. So let us start without further ado. Uta, I will ask you to please go ahead and share your screen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henri, for the nice introduction. And I'm going to share my screen with all of you. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for this invitation and for this option to talk to you today. As you said, I want to present the librarian's view on open access in astronomy. And to start off, actually, I would like to go back one moment to the definition of open access so that we all know what we are talking about here and we're all on the same page, so to say. So open access is defined as the free, immediate online availability of research articles coupled with the rights to use these articles fully in the digital environment. So there are two aspects to it. It's the free and immediate availability, not after 12 months, not after 6 months, but immediately upon publication of a manuscript, and the rights to use. So these are the two aspects. Now, the open access movement is nothing new. This goes back basically to the early 1990s, when the internet became available on a larger scale. And it has always been motivated by basically two aspects. One is the idea that publicly funded research should be available to everybody. So that plays in the direction of we want to increase the knowledge exchange. The other one has been mostly brought forward, of course, by libraries. And that was the expectation to finally reduce the expenditure that we had to pay for the journal subscriptions. These were ever rising subscription fees. We could just not cope with it. And one additional flavor that we wanted to bring here forward is that we are also lobbying strongly for more cost transparency, because usually the way how journal prices are set up is something like a black box to the librarians. Now, if we look back a little, what were the immediate effects of these early adopters? Well, first, there was lots of trying and encouraging and lobbying, advocating among researchers, among funders, also among librarians. In astronomy, we were very lucky to have very early on already a visionary, namely Paul Ginsparg, who already back in 1991 set up what we today still know as the archive or AstroPH ePrint server, whereby he really brought into the digital era this concept of preprint sharing that has been very widely used in astronomy ever since. A little bit fast forward, not so much in the past, we saw also publishers already adapting to this new paradigm, and they of course understood that they had to reinvent a business model for themselves. Now, the old model of subscriptions govern the flow of funds into my pockets by readers paying seemed to be eroding a bit, so they were fast to invent a new model. They went from the readers pay to the authors pay approach, and soon the discussion started to circle around so-called article fees. One issue that unfortunately also came up and still keeps us also busy are the so-called predatory journals or even predatory publishers. These are open access publishers who basically accept all manuscripts that come flying their way without proper quality control, as long as the authors pay. And this is, of course, I want to say, unethical way of handling publications. Unfortunately, this has contributed a lot to the partly bad reputation that open access publishing has gained in those times, not rightfully, I believe. So if we just look at some terminology and also some differences between the traditional journal that we see and the open access journal publishing. So if we have our young scientist here, she wants to publish her manuscript, and she can decide in which of the two branches she wants to publish her manuscript. If she goes with the traditional model, she will find, of course, her article sitting behind a subscription bar, so to say. Access is only possible if you have a subscription in place. Some delayed or temporary open access might be available, but this is totally in the hands of the publisher. And the usage rights, not only of today, but also in the future, are also governed by the publisher. Now, in contrast, if we look at the open access journal, there we have ticked the immediate and permanent access for everybody. That box is checked. These articles are available to read, but not only, they can be used, they can be further distributed. Text mining is an option too, as long as the proper attribution, the citation, so to say, is given. And how this has to be done is governed by licenses. The most common here are the Creative Commons licenses, and among those, you will have heard mentioning of the CC BY, which is the Creative Commons attribution license. In terms of business models, there are two branches, basically. One is the gold open access model, whereby the publishing costs are calculated based on a per paper approach. This leads then to article processing charges, or APCs. We will hear more about that later. Another flavor is the so-called diamond or platinum, or sometimes we also call it subsidized open access, where no direct costs occur, no direct costs occur, but no direct costs to the readers or the authors. And again, we will come back to that concept later. Now, for both flavors of publishing, the traditional model and the open access model, in addition, of course, the green open access road is available. That means that the authors themselves archive their manuscripts, typically an author accepted manuscript, or AAM as we call it now. In astronomy, of course, Archive AstroPH is the platform where this is happening. However, we want to point out that this version then is only free to read. The usage rights are not covered, and it is also typically not the version of record. One word about hybrid journals. These are commercial, traditionally published journals, so they use the subscription-based model. In addition, they allow individual authors to pay a charge, an APC, for their individual articles so that these articles become available open access. And that is seen as basically charging twice for the same content. It's called also double dipping, and by now it's pretty much frowned upon in the community. So also the funders are not happy with this model. We'll tell you more about that later. So I think it's safe to say that this, as a business model, it's pretty much on its way out. Of course, there are other advantages of open access publishing too. Not only can your immediate peers read and reuse the articles that you put out, but also, for instance, researchers in developing countries who perhaps before could not afford the journals, practitioners can apply the knowledge that you put out there. Higher citation rates is sometimes being discussed. And very importantly, here in the bottom left corner, you see that grant rules are increasingly adapted and amended in such a way that open access publishing becomes mandatory. That brings us to one thing that Henri already mentioned, namely Plan S. Let's spend a moment to see what that is. It was announced back in September 2018 already by the then open access envoy of the European Commission, named Robert Jan Smits. And he always claimed that Plan S stands for solution or shock or shift. And well, in my view, it could also stand for Smits, but that's a personal take. Their aim in any case is to make full and immediate open access a reality by making it mandatory. And their strategy is basically to align research funders in the so-called Coalition S. Initially, these were like 15 national funding organizations, including the European Commission and European Research Council. I think now they are almost up to 30. They have developed 10 so-called Plan S principles. I just want to mention 3 here. Namely, one, that authors are supposed to retain copyright so they can decide how usage should look like in the future. Quality of the open access journal is an issue. And like I mentioned before, these funders do not pay for publications in so-called hybrid journals. Now, the Plan S should have originally become effective already in 2020, but because it was on relatively short notice, there was so much need for discussion and clarification that they actually pushed it by 1 year. But now, January this year, it has actually become effective. The desired effects, according to the originators, of course, is to achieve a shift towards new models in academic publishing that are then really more transparent, more efficient, and also more fair than what we have seen before. The real effects so far, but stay tuned, certainly more is to come, is a vastly increased amount of discussion about the topic of open access. I think we can even say it's a disruption of the publishing landscape because everybody had to position themselves in some way and come up with solutions. One thing that publishers try to do is they try to find temporary solutions on short notice to be what is called Plan S compliant. And this has led to these agreements that we call transformative agreements, which are in place only for a limited time. I will tell you more about that in 2 slides from now. One thing I would like to point out to you is a tool that has been long awaited and is now available, but only in beta, so not the final version yet. It's actually called the Plan S Journal Checker tool, which you can find at the URL I indicated here. And it's a very simplistic interface that allows you to enter just 3 different kinds of information. If you have a manuscript that you wish to publish and that you wish to be Plan S compliant, you enter the journal where you would like to publish, you enter the funding source on which you operate, and your own institution, because that also plays into where and what and how you can publish. And then the tool spits out for the combination that you entered, whether or not this is Plan S compliant. But not only, it also tells you what exactly you have to do to be sure to make it Plan S compliant, along with a number of explanations how they come to this result. So I would say if this is of interest to you, please go and check it out. Sorry, I wanted to go one step further back. Here in this table, we see a more schematic and more high-level overview of the currently most frequently used publication business models. As you see, for all of these models here, I indicated who pays, how much is to be paid in a very simplistic way, of course. Then once the costs are covered, who can read, who can publish, can we call this Plan S compliant, and also what is the expected cost evolution. Now here I have to say a little disclaimer, because this is entirely based on my personal understanding of the situation. So it's not scientifically found and safe and secure, and you may come to a different conclusion here. Just to point out very few lines here, as you see at the top, the subscriptions, including the hybrid journals that we mentioned before. If you look at the column Plan S compliant, no, none of these are Plan S compliant. In the center of the table, you find the box with transformative agreements. They are often referred to also as read and publish, or publish and read agreements. There are typically some consortia or larger institutions that go into negotiations with the publishers directly, come up with some cost per article, and this is then fed back into the community. If you look in the Plan S compliant column, you can see that this is only valid for 3 years, so ending in 2023. If you want my personal view on this, I am a little bit skeptical about these transformative agreements as they have been put forward right now. Unfortunately, from what I can see so far, there is no real look beyond these 3 years. So what will happen? What is the ultimate goal? Where do you want to go with these transformative agreements? And I also see that we are going from one dependency, namely libraries being dependent on the subscription costs put forward by the publishers, to another dependency, namely libraries now being dependent on the APCs put forward by the publishers. So I'm not convinced here. There are 2 models, though, that I would like to point out, which I find very promising. One falls in the category of gold open access, so it's still using the APC per article cost covering, so to say, but in this case, these are overlay journals. They are typically run by very dedicated volunteers, scientists, who basically take an existing green open access infrastructure. So in astronomy, this is AstroPH. And on top of that, they build, this is why it's called overlay journal, a refereeing structure. And with that, that construct, the costs that they need to charge in the end go vastly down. This you can see in the final column where I indicated these green arrows pointing sharply down. According to my experience or my view on my understanding, this is the only model in all of these that we see here that really will reduce the costs in the whole system a lot. That said, another model that I find personally very promising is the one that is listed in the Diamond Open Access group, which is called Subscribe to Open, or S2O as we call this for short, which is library funded along with some other sponsors. And as you see here, it's based on the previous subscription prices. Maybe we do not see immediate reductions for the individual subscribing, so to say, entities, but in the long run, I think this is a fair and collaborative model. Now, Anne will talk much more about that, so I leave a more detailed explanation to her. So if we then open the view and look at the larger view just for a moment, we have seen how costs in publishing are shifting from the journal level to the article level. And then the logical next question, I believe, is shouldn't this also be reflected somehow in research assessment and research evaluation? And I personally would say, yes, this is very much needed, and probably we would see, first of all, a shift towards article level metrics when it comes to evaluation of individual articles. So far, still the journal impact factor, which has been misused for decades in order to judge individual researchers' output, is still around. It should not be used for the evaluation of individual research output. Another question, of course, could be, shouldn't we give credit for those researchers that actively support the open science idea and open science activities, for instance, by publishing in or refereeing for open access journals? And the whole evaluation process certainly should be transparent and reproducible and robust and diverse. That's, I think, a key word. And I'm very happy to say that, as far as I know, the DORA, Declaration of Research Assessment, is a topic of one upcoming duologue. So there's more discussion about that. Final question here. Should we perhaps rely exclusively on e-prints, since the publishing world is so upside down anyway? But then follow-up questions are, how about peer review? How about quality control? Maybe even the sheer volume of publishing and posting manuscripts is so high that we do need a pre-selection by the editors and by the referees. Obviously, I do not have any answers to these questions. It's also not for me to answer these, but I'm sure there will be lots of more discussion around these topics in the near future. And then just to conclude, a recap on how we see and what we see in open access publishing in astronomy. Well, we all know that the core journals, the 4 or 5 core journals that we have in astronomy, luckily are governed by learned societies. So the AAS, Royal Astronomical Society, also ESO. This gives us as the astronomy community a much stronger handle on what is going on in the publishing sector than in many other subject areas. Read access, we mentioned that before, is widely available, especially to the current literature, but also to the legacy archives, thanks to AstroPH and temporary access granted by the publishers. And in general, we mentioned also before this collaborative approach that is very widespread in astronomy. It's not only e-print sharing, it's also data and code sharing. So there is a culture of openness anyway in astronomy. So then the question is, well, do we actually need further open access regulations? And this brings us back to the topic of this afternoon. Should we actually care? And my reply to that is yes, because I think there are strong reasons why we all should care. One is that I strongly believe open access is here to stay. Some years ago, there may have been researchers who thought perhaps, well, you know, if we just wait long enough, then this will pass, it will go away. I do not believe so. Open access is here to stay. Also, this is an excellent moment to finally fully implement the so-called FAIR principles, which means make your research artifacts findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. This is the moment. Also, as we have seen, of course, funders are increasingly demanding that research financed by their grants has to be published in open access. And last but not least, I think open access in other subject areas is strongly now becoming also good science practice. And I don't think that astronomy should be outside of these, let's say, industry standards. So now finally, just to conclude, how can we achieve this? If we look at some wishes and requirements, I believe, from some key players. First, the publishers. I'm sure many of them would be very happy to flip, but of course, and understandably, they must be embarking on long-lasting, sustainable solutions with reliable partners. For the researchers as readers, it's very clear that everybody prefers to have access to as many articles as possible, especially those, of course, who are active in multidisciplinary research, but not only. As authors, I'm sure you would want the move to open access to be as seamless and non-disruptive as possible. Nobody wants to handle an individual invoice for every manuscript that you're publishing. So this is pointing in the diamond open access model that we mentioned before, where there are no direct costs, neither to the readers nor to the authors. And finally, as libraries, I explained that we cannot afford the rising subscription or also APC costs. We need to embark on a newer system, and I'm sure that the vast majority of librarians fully support the open access movement, and in particular, we would like to see it happen in a collaborative way. Thank you.
Many thanks, Uta. So, Anne?
Yes, hello. Hello, everyone. I will now share my screen. If you could just confirm that you can see it. Okay, thank you. Yes, well, thank you, Henry and Giacomo, for inviting me to this Cosmic Duologue.
And it's not your presenter mode.
Sorry?
Maybe you want to go to the
presenter mode, excuse me. Yes, and thank you, of course, also Uta for her first presentation, which really laid the ground for my one. She explained, I think, very well the what is open access, the different flavors of open access, and the benefits. So this goes a long way to answering the "why should I care" question. And I'm going to present here the publisher's point of view, and in particular the case of Astronomy and Astrophysics, which is published by EDP Sciences. So yes, I'm Anne Remy. I work as a senior publisher for EDP Sciences. I'm in charge of a portfolio of maths and physics journals for EDP Sciences, and in particular for A&A. So I'm in charge of the editorial development of these journals and overseeing the various aspects of the production of these journals. My background is not in astronomy. I have a PhD in ecology, so I will ask for your understanding. If you have any more astronomy related questions, I may not be the best person to answer. Okay, so this is just to reiterate what Uta said, but in a simple diagram. So open access is not just being able to read for free the content the articles that you want to read, but there's also an element of reusability. So full literal open access also has an element of free to reuse, and this is governed by the Creative Commons license, as Uta explained very well. And these two parts are what constitutes full open access. But saying that, there are many definitions of open access, and this is not always the definition, or this is not always how the term is used. So we have different open access models, and again, I'll just follow the definitions that Uta has nicely presented. So there's gold open access, which is generally equivalent to the author. The author supports the publication cost by paying an article processing charge for their articles. Diamond open access is generally the access is free, so there's no charge for authors and there's no charge for readers. And traditionally, diamond open access are journals that are sponsored by societies. So they could be there could be a society or a university deciding to publish a journal and cover all the costs for the publication and open that content for everyone. Then there is also green open access, which are their journals generally that are they're published on the basis of subscription, but there's various rights that are given to authors to archive their papers on a repository of their choice. So generally in astronomy, this is the archive or AstroPH repository. Green open access can come in different hues. It can be light green or dark green, depending on how generous or how restrictive these accesses are. And I could say, from EDP Sciences that we do have very generous green open access policies, particularly applying for astronomy and astrophysics. I mean, authors can pretty much do whatever they want with their preprint, but also with the published version of their articles. If you have, you can actually post your PDF on archive if archive will let you do it. But you can post your own, every version of your article immediately in a repository of your choice. So these are the traditional open access models. Then there are alternative or different ones, and this is by no means, and you can refer back to Uta's big table. This is by no means exhaustive. I think somebody counted these types, the various types of open access models, and there's over 20, I think 27 various models that have been listed and described. But of some of the the important ones, and one that Uta mentioned as well is the transformative agreement. So, for example, the publish and read model. And this is a publisher. So let's say EDP Sciences, we have a couple of these agreements in place. One with the Max Planck digital library, so the agreement is with authors, with the Max Planck institutes only. So Max Planck institutes have access to all the content of the journals that they subscribe to. And then in addition, researchers affiliated with this institution, with one of the institutes, can publish in the journals in ANA in open access free of charge. And then there's the subscribe to open model, which is a new model, which I'll mention a little bit later. We do have at EDP Sciences, we do have some experience of implementing this subscribe to open model on some maths journals, which I'm in charge also. And discussions have been ongoing for a couple of years actually with ANA on where ANA wants to go in terms of open access, but this is one of the models that has been discussed in depth with no decision really having been made so far. So ANA, for those of you who don't know the journal, but I'm sure you all do. So the journal was launched in 1968. It's owned by ANA members. So these are European members and some in South America. ESO is a member. It's published by EDP Sciences since 2001, but it has switched over its history to various publishers. And for us now, we're a medium-sized publisher. It is our flagship journal. We're very proud and very happy that Astronomy and Astrophysics has trusted us to publish their journal since 2001. And we do try to really keep ANA happy and to keep providing the services that they want and that they need. Okay, so what's involved in publishing ANA? There's often misconceptions about this. Publishing may mean to some of you just typesetting. So you have an article that's actually already in LaTeX format that actually looks very similar to the article as it will look like finally. And you may wonder, what is the added value of the publisher? Well, there's quite a range of different things that we do, and this is kind of put here in a schematic way. But yes, there is the production. So we take the source files and we typeset them. We put them in PDF format. We also put them in other formats, so HTML format, which is a more responsive format that's that's readable in different on different devices. We also have a website and publishing platform for ANA with lots of different additional functionalities. You can have statistics and so on the website. We manage, so I'm going kind of clockwise here from production. We manage the subscriptions for the journals. We work, and I'm particularly involved in different projects. One of them is an open access working group that was set up, I think, in 2019 with the executive committee of ANA, with ESO, with Uta, in particular, myself and some members of EDP Sciences, just to explore different options and to try to advise the journal on the different routes and the pros and cons and the implications of the different the different routes, and also following the trends. I mean, all this is unfortunately not fixed in time. Things evolve a lot, and they're evolving even now with the with the pandemic. Things have been completely disturbed again in terms of the subscription model and so on. We also take charge of the marketing for ANA. So just to show you a few little goodies, this was part of the ANA 50 years, for example, 50 years anniversary, 2019, I believe, 2019, 2020. We also provide an editorial system for ANA. So that's the manuscript management system. So if you submit an article, this is how it's been handled, the peer review process and so on. This is the editorial system that had been developed by EDP Sciences a number of years ago. And we're actually working on developing a new editorial system, which will be launched this year, actually shortly in the coming months. Again, very responsive to the needs of ANA. And that will also provide a seamless, a migration of the existing content or the existing archives to the new system, and also a more seamless transition between the editorial process and the production process. So when your article has been accepted, you can actually continue to follow it. You will be able to follow it, what's happening to it in the same system without having to log into a different system to see, your proofs and to sign your forms and so on. Statistics and so on. These are all the, some of the things we do for ANA, and I have this little link down here, which you'll get the slide, but it's an interesting article published in the Scholarly Kitchen blog, showing 102 things journal publishers do, and I think it's a really good resource just to kind of give you a broader view of what we do. So EDP Sciences and open access. So why are we EDP Sciences engaged in transitioning to OA, to open access? So there are societal and political demands. It's the way, the direction things are going is towards more and not less open access. And, publishing is just following on other industries. This is just the way things are going, and, there's no going back. There are funders and countries' mandates for OA publications, such as the Plan S that Uta mentioned. It's our own interest as well. We want to disseminate our content more widely and increase its impact. We don't have the same sales power as large publishers. We can't impose, we can't go to a library and say, well, you need our journals, you need us, so take our package, and pay millions for it. It doesn't work like that for us. So this is a big, for us, this is a really big effort to continue working, trying to function on the basis of subscription. It's not something that is automatic, let's say, that is automatic like it could be for bigger publishers. So we want to disseminate our content. There are indications. It's not 100% significant. It's not as significant correlation, let's say, between open access and increased citations, but yet, you know, content being more widely available means that it can be cited possibly better. And of course, then there's the economic context of decreasing library budgets, which means that we have to adapt and look at different solutions. So in conclusion of this slide, just to say, as a company, as a publishing company, we are engaged in an ethical but also financially sustainable transition of our entire portfolio of journals to open access via different routes. So we're not just going one route, let's say the gold open access or whatever. We have, you know, we're actually actively supporting journals transitioning to open access in their, you know, in the time they want, in the time that they're comfortable with, and with the model that suits them the best. So astronomy and astrophysics and open access. So the current situation is, of course, you've just heard as well from Uta, is just very widespread use of archive in the astronomy community. That means that the basic research, whether it's in the form of a submitted manuscript or the accepted manuscript or the final version, it is available in archive, and it has probably been read already on archive. In terms of the content that we actually publish, so the finally produced content, a large portion of it is already free to read. So that's not open access, but it is available free to read. So for example, letters, so kind of fast publication of important research. There are free sections, so entirely sections that are entirely free. So for example, catalogs and data type articles. The archives are also opened after 1 year. So this means that the subscription, what's behind the subscription wall is only there hidden for 1 year. After this, everything is opened on the EDP Sciences platform. And actually other platforms, ADS, you can access to ADS and so on. So ANA is technically a hybrid journal. So it's a subscription journal, but also accepting APC. So if authors want to pay an article processing charge to have their article immediately in full open access, they can do it. It's a very small portion of our the articles that are published, only about 0.5%. So in terms of double dipping, I don't think we're doing too bad. It is also we have also negotiated transformative open access agreements. So with a consortium of French institutions and the Max Planck institutes. So which means that if you're a corresponding author affiliated with one of these institutions, you will be you should be semi-automatically detected as an author who benefits from free open access in the journal. So the conclusion of this is to say, just in terms of ANA and open access, this current situation is that much of the content in ANA is already either in free access or in open access. So how do we go from there? So why should ANA, considering that it's already it's already widely available in various forms, why should it consider a transition to full open access? Well, first of all, a generous free access policy is not sustainable for the publisher, as you can imagine. I mean, it works, but it's something that's just hanging there and magically works. But it's by making everything free, it's somewhere along the line, maybe it'll come with the pandemic, maybe some other in some other way, it can't continue like this. I mean, for the journal itself, as a publisher publishing this journal on behalf of a society, for example, we reverse back, we pay back royalties to the journal as well. So if the publisher can't survive, this money is not accessible to ANA either. ANA have so far, and this is also I think behind their decisions for the moment to stay with us. They want to maintain a certain level of publishing services. They want to have an ad hoc editorial system, a website, and so on. which for the moment has meant that they want to stay with a publisher, and they're happy to stay with a publisher that's providing custom, very personalized services to them. And another reason is, and this is what was made clear as well in Uta's presentation, is that free open access is not the same thing as open access. So open access, which is what a lot of funders, for example, are mandating, include the right to reuse the article, to data mine and so on. So what are the challenges and the opportunities for ANA if it was to change from the relatively comfortable position where it is now to transition to a full open access journal? So the challenges are, the APC model is not in favor, in the astronomy community. However, and to complexify this, the existing funding model is already quite complicated. And although the APC, the article processing charges is not in favor, at the same time, non-ANA members do pay already page charges, depending on the number of pages, just for the fees of process or for the editorial fees behind processing their articles. I could see opportunities for ANA. I mean, whether it's ANA or another astronomy journal, I think that the first astronomy journal that will, take the step to transition to full open access will have a competitive advantage to the others. And that's, I'm talking about, the major journals. I mean, there are full open access, journals that have been launched, but, the first major journal will have an advantage. And also the opportunities would be to be independent from third-party platforms. I mean, we know that arXiv is here and it's wonderful, and it's based, like Uta says, on volunteer work. At the same time, this may or may not continue, and I mean, volunteers are people who are paid, by their university. I mean, Cornell University, for example. Whether, I mean, so far it has been supported by their institution, this additional work that they do. Whether it will be the case forever is a question mark, and whether it is the main role of a university to provide the service to the entire world is a question. And whether it's their role to acquire the expertise to be publishers is another question as well. Okay, and here I will talk about Subscribe to Open, which is a model that could possibly maybe reconcile the librarians, the publishers, and the researchers. And it's something that we have discussed with ANA as part of the open access working group, and that is being considered seriously, but again, no decision has been made on that. Subscribe to Open, a really short definition would be it's a model that converts subscription journals to open access using existing library subscriptions. So the idea is, okay, so everybody, the subscribers have paid their yearly fee. Everybody's happy, everybody's paid. Our staff at EDP Sciences is paid. All the services are there and paid for. So why not actually open the access now to everyone? So that's kind of the idea behind that. And the model is then we continue. So it's reviewed year on year, and every year we launch the subscription campaign for the year. If we explained, of course, to the subscribers, this is what we want to do, and they are becoming more and more aware of this new type of model, and are on the whole quite supportive. So we're saying to them, okay, this year our subscription renewal campaign is on the model of Subscribe to Open. Do you agree, to continue to subscribe for the journal? And if you and everyone else who subscribed so far continues to subscribe, we will publish the content to all in full open access. So with a free to read, but also with the CC BY license. So it's a model. If it works, it's free to publish and free to read. So it can fall under the Diamond open access model category. You could say it's in the library's self-interest, because if they don't want to subscribe, and if there's a few sufficient few who don't want to subscribe, then we won't publish the content in open access, and so nobody benefits from it, and the libraries don't have access either. So either they want access or they don't want access. And if they want access and if they support the open access movement, then they can subscribe under this model. So generally, we find that libraries support the open access movement. Would like to support the open access movement. And in that case, rather than subscribers, they become more like institutional partners. And we're working with them on how to make this partnership beneficial and how to promote this partnership, this library being an actual supporter of the journal transitioning to open access. So there are risks, although it's in the library's interest to subscribe. At the same time, an individual library might think, okay, well, maybe there will be enough. Maybe there will be enough of others subscribing, and this year we just don't have the money and our budgets have been cut, and we're just going to not subscribe and hope that the content is going to be available in open access. And that may very well happen. We're trying to work with libraries, to establish more perennial type of partnerships, but it may be that they're just not able to follow, and it may also be that there are actual restrictions to what they can and can't do. So yes, that's the model in a nutshell. I know it's a little bit, it can be a little bit difficult to understand, the first time you're exposed to it. So please feel free to ask questions after the talk. We've also joined, and I think Uta has as well as an ESO member. We've also joined a new community, which is the Subscribe to Open Community of Practice, which was set up by Annual Reviews. They were the first inventors, let's say, of this model, and we're regularly discussing with them on whatever experience, what different members' experiences of trying to actually apply this model. And as with everything, the devil is in the detail. What you do, when do you transition, what you do with your archives and so on. There's just an endless amount of questions that arise. And yeah, just that's my concluding slide, just to say that Subscribe to Open is, potentially, a very nice model, of publishers and librarians working together to open the access to research. So it's a little bit reconciling the two, the two parts of this duologue, the publisher versus the librarians. And I'm hoping that we can work together with the ESO library in particular, whether it's part of the Subscribe to Open model or some other model that will emerge. We'll see. But yeah, thank you. Oh no, sorry. Well, questions, and there's a little free cartoon for you to while you think of your questions. I'll let you ponder.
So many thanks, Uta and Anne, for those really very interesting talks, and which contain a lot of information that I'm sure the audience has learned a lot. Just maybe I take the privilege to be the moderator to make one comment, is that you are mentioning, of course, archive, and it was presented as something done by volunteers. Of course, yeah, it started like that, but now, of course, if I understood correctly, I mean, most libraries are paying for archive. I mean, the most big users have to pay for archive. Basically, you are obliged to do. So it's really no more such a voluntary service anymore. I mean, it's really a service that we pay for. And so if we move to open access, maybe this needs to be reconsidered. So I don't know if you want to, I mean, maybe Anne, you can stop sharing the screen, and then also Jutta, you can unmute, and then we can see each other. And then I can see that Uta did not agree with my statement, which is fine. So.
Well, not fully. I mean, the way when we were approached by Archive, by the Cornell University Library, who's running the system now, it was presented a bit more as a voluntary effort. We were also given our access rate, so to say, the download rate, so statistics on how much ESO researchers use that platform. It was not presented as obligatory, you have to pay or we shut you down. So it was a little bit more gentle. Still, at that point, this was years ago, we, of course, concluded together with the Director for Science that actually Archive as a platform can be seen as an important information resource, basically similar to a journal. So we decided to support them with the amount they asked for, and I think that's ethically speaking the right decision.
Yeah, of course. I was a little bit provocative, but still, maybe we need, of course, then to reconsider the role of Archive. If all the journals become open access, do we still need that or not? I mean, I think this is also something people may need to think about in the future. So before we start with my real questions, or at least the questions from the audience, do you have any comments you want to do yourself? I mean, you have also listened to each other presentation. So Uta, do you want to ask something to Anne?
Yes, happily. Thank you, Henri. So as I pointed out, I'm very interested in these overlay journals model, and I'd be very curious to hear a bit more about what Anne actually thinks about that. At first glance, it sounds very attractive, reasonable, a straightforward solution to do. But what is the look behind the scenes? Is this seen as a real threat, as a competitor to established publishers?
Yeah, okay, thank you, Uta. So yeah, I mean, overlay journals, we're definitely following them, and they are certainly something of a threat. I mean, we have had we have had some of our journals kind of moving to these type of platforms. So I would say, I mean, in terms of cost reduction, yes, the overlay journals can provide, I mean, can do a lot cheaper. Again, we have the same debate about volunteers. I mean, part of the reason that it's cheaper is that some of the work, let's say, some of the resources are provided by volunteers in inverted commas, which are generally they're public, they're public bodies who are funded by something. I mean, someone has to pay somewhere. So, I mean, whether it's taxpayers or whoever it is, someone's paying for it. And secondly, I would say that, it has been attractive, and it is attractive to certain journals and even to new journals wanting to launch, particularly because of this low cost. But at the same time, I think, for established journals and also for researchers, I think there's still, although we may all, support a system where, where there isn't like this, the strength of the impact factor and all these kind of metrics and all this, the weight of the history and so on. At the same time, there is an attachment, I think, in researchers on, an attachment to traditional, historical journals, and to the kind of service as well that these journals provide, and the kind of, the way they're viewed and the way they're evaluated. And for journals as well, I think it would be a big step to I guess to decide to forego a lot of the services and the kind of the added on services that they provide, to have a kind of a bare bones publishing platform. So it may happen, and it's probably very much part of the evolution of publishing. but I guess it's, you know, it's probably not going to be the right solution for all. And I'd say, you know, for some time, at least some diversity would continue to exist, you know, between traditional journals and these kind of, you know, new platforms.
Thank you, Anne.
So Anne, did you have a question for Uta?
For Uta, yes. Well, for me, I guess it's a question for Uta, but only for Uta as a representative of of libraries in general. I mean, what is your sense, you know, especially considering the current, you know, the current market and the current, you know, the current state of the economy? What is your sense of libraries supporting a model like a subscribe to open model, where they're basically asked to contribute, you know, in the face of decreasing funds, in order to have to provide benefits for the entire society?
Yeah, thank you, Anne. That's a reasonable question, but as I pointed out in the presentation already, this is a model that I find very convincing for a number of reasons. One is that by definition it has the word collaborative somewhere in the explanation, and this is something I value very highly. I think we have to overcome this concept whereby each of the stronger players in the market, you know, be it the authors / readers, the funders, the publishers, the librarians, see each other as enemies. No, this is not what we are. We are all parts of the same puzzle and we should collaborate. So for that reason alone, I like that approach a lot. But there are other reasons. One is that this model uses an existing infrastructure, which I think is the smartest thing to do. If we think of open access models that are built entirely around the article processing charges, this brings actually a number of questions, ethical questions even. How should the available funds be distributed? You know, who publishes first, as long as there are funds to publish under an APC model? Senior researchers earlier than the students, or vice versa, or women earlier than men, or vice versa, or those who come first, or those who ask for very small amount only. You know, it's a ton of questions that we have to answer, which brings questions that all cost a lot of time. And in my view, this is not even necessary if there was a model like Subscribe to Open that allowed us to continue as we did before. Another positive point in my view is the transparency that this model brings, and also to some extent a predictability. So it is clear, it is in a way honest, I want to say, and open and transparent also from the side of the publisher. What can I as a librarian, as a library, expect? What is expected of me? So that ties in very much with the collaboration aspect that I mentioned before. And then finally, I think one aspect that is very important for us, especially me being a librarian in a very small dedicated astronomy library, we are not interested in all the knowledge that is out there. So sometimes in agreements like these transformative agreements we heard about, you know, read and publish, I would be obliged to embark on all of a sudden participating in journals that my community is not interested in. The Subscribe to Open, I think, is a model that allows specifically the smaller libraries to support exactly that content that is relevant to their community. And this is the best I can wish for as a librarian.
Thank you. So concerning those, this Subscribe to Open model, the way, Anne, you presented it was that, in fact, the year's content is published in open access as long as the subscriptions are maintained. Is this not a little bit contradictory to the need to find a long-lasting and sustainable solution? I mean, would it not be better to require long-term commitments and from the libraries, and at the same time, you would guarantee that the cost won't increase more than within a given range, for example?
Yeah, thank you, Henry. Yes, indeed. I mean, this is one of the big, the big question marks on the subscribe to open. And indeed, I think finding partners, librarian partners who are willing to to commit. I mean, of course, no one can commit blindly to the future. No one knows really what's going to happen in terms of budgets and so on. But yes, I mean, we are looking to establish partnerships, and in a little bit in kind of to respond to what you were talking about with archive and the how they came to you with the usage statistics. I mean, this is what we're engaged in doing as well with Subscribe to Open, is to look at when anyone can look at the content in a way, you don't know exactly who's there. So to try to identify these users with their IP addresses, and to be able to link this back to specific institutions, and to go back to this institution, maybe one that hasn't been subscribing yet, or maybe one that has been subscribing yet but is thinking, okay, well, I don't know maybe if we're using it so much, and to be able to go back to them with saying, well, look, so many of your members, or people located in your institutions or nearby are using the content, so it's something that is of interest to your to your people. So yeah, I think these are kind of tools to not just rely on habit of kind of renewing subscriptions, but more to look at the actual usage of the content, who uses the content, and who then should be persuaded to subscribe on a voluntary basis in some cases. And I mean, our goal in particular, for our goal is not to increase the profit. I mean, we do want, we are committed to a degree of transparency on this. And if by chance, instead of reducing year on year, if by chance we manage to attract more subscribers, yes, we are committed to reducing the subscription price for the subscribers.
So concerning transparency, there was a question on the chat, on the YouTube chat, so where it says that the Patent Office publish millions of technical documents which are open access, and they also collect high fees, of course, to fund their operation. But on the other hand, they publish very detailed fee schedules, apparently. So the question is, why, if it is so easy to compare between all those Patent Office costs, why are publishers not really publishing detailed fee schedules? Why is there this lack of transparency?
I mean, we do publish the subscription prices for the journal. We publish we do publish the subscription prices, which are actually quite low. And most, I should say as well that, unlike the big publishers, and unlike, what Uta was saying, we don't want to be in a transformative agreement and have to buy all the journals from that publishing company that we don't need. Most of our subscriptions are actually sold as single journals. We have the option for subscribers to pay for the full collection, but it's actually a minority of the subscriptions that are paid for. And we probably should have, but we don't have a very detailed tiered structure. I think there's only I think what's published is just a price up to a company for an institution up to a certain, I don't know, maybe 10,000 employees or FTEs. And after this, you can contact us. But basically, what it boils down to is that most institutions fall in that one tier of subscribers.
Yeah, but you said, for example, that publishers are making 102 useful things. So maybe it would be nice to see, what each of those costs, And so then people could say, well, yeah, but that's fine. But in fact, we are not interested in those ones. So maybe we can get something cheaper.
Yeah, true. Yes. And yeah, I mean, we are actually providing this information to ANA. I mean, we're not providing it, I guess, to the wider public on a journal per journal basis. I mean, on our website, we have a vague, as in an overall kind of pie chart of the cost of different services, for whatever marketing and so on for a typical journal. But of course, this varies a lot, depending on the journal, and on the services that are provided. So for ANA, every year we do provide them the cost of different services, and they do want to have a look at these costs, and they're asking for these costs and to look at, maybe changing some of these, and maybe some of these we don't want. So we are engaged in that conversation with ANA. But no, I guess, I mean, the detailed costs, so for the moment, are not provided from our side on a journal per journal basis.
Okay, so it would be more for ANA director board to be more transparent to the community,
I guess, or for us, or for us to agree and to implement it, I guess, yeah.
Okay, so and yes,
sorry, Henri, may I just add to that? So I think this might be prompted a little bit also because I said that prices often are a black box. What I meant actually was that, especially in the older days, libraries often were obliged by, let's say, the really strong publishers in the commercial market not to reveal how much they have to pay for their given subscription. So even with my closest colleague, I could not discuss prices because, it might be different, the price tag that they see versus what I see. And if you're banned in such a way from open discussion, this raises suspicion, and it's just not creating that feeling of somebody is playing openly with me.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Uta, you mentioned that there are already some kind of transformative agreement in place, and Anne mentioned that for ANA there are already some with Max Planck and with French institutions. So can you give some other examples of institutions or funders which have already have such agreements in place, and for which journals?
For our own, for our within EDP Sciences, that's the only ones. But of course, there are many more, consortia. I mean, we have been in discussion with the JISC in the UK, for example, this year on a possible transformative agreement. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to an agreement, but these are also a consortium of libraries who are very much engaged in, well, actually they were up until now very much engaged in negotiating transformative agreements, and now they're kind of switching a little bit. So, this is what I meant by the things evolving really almost on a day-to-day basis. I mean, they're now, I think, moving away a little bit from transformative agreements and looking at supporting more subscribe to open type models. Yeah, so I mean, but there are, I mean, many publishers have many transformative agreements. I mean, even Elsevier, who were one of the last to join the bandwagon, I mean, they resisted very much this whole idea because, I mean, they basically didn't want to provide, this open access for free on top of the subscription. And they were, they were fought very fiercely by, by various countries and consortia, including Germany, and there has been some entire countries or institutions, I think University of California unsubscribed from Elsevier, and this is a big, I guess this is a big blow, which means that researchers who actually, because they are major journals in whatever field, and this means that basically from one day to the other, researchers are left without access that they used to have. So they have to go to, they have to go to archive, or they have to, find other ways to find this content, either legally or illegally, but it's just not as convenient. So they went, up until recently, there was a resistance, but even Elsevier has now negotiated some of these agreements, which I think would at the Netherlands, many different countries. Most publishers are involved in these negotiations. They're very. It is harder for a small publisher to do this. I mean, it's just very time consuming, and it's also, again, you have to have the sales power. If you have to have a portfolio of journals that if the access was cut, this was actually change the way researchers work. So yeah, they're I can't remember what I was saying, but yeah. There are many examples.
Okay, Uta, you want to add something? Oh.
Well, the consortium, so to say, that I know best because we considered to jump on board there is the German one that is called DEAL, all capital letters, DEAL, which is done under the guidance of the Max Planck Digital Society, Library, I'm sorry, Max Planck Digital Library in Germany. I know of very many colleagues who are following this deal agreement. I considered whether it was beneficial for ESO to join or not. And then, as I said before, I came to the conclusion that it was again another black box, because it is already pretty clear after the Max Planck Digital Library went into negotiations with the three big publishers are the ones that were tackled first. So Springer, Wiley, and as Anne just said, and Elsevier. They cooked up a certain APC per article that is the basis of the agreement. Then they also leveled in all the subscriptions that are currently taking place, and out comes something that everybody has to contribute. And I heard the head of I read about the head of the Max Planck Digital Library saying things like, well, what the heck, there is enough money in the market. And that, I think, is a statement that really should not be made anymore. This is exactly the problem. If we do not want to diminish what our taxpayers have to pay for these journals, then something is wrong. Just because we are paying right now that amount of money, it does not mean that so much money has to stay there in that business, especially if some of the commercial publishers are happily active on the stock market. So that in itself, the whole model, how it was set up, I personally think is not convincing. And it's also not long lasting. I mean, they put a lot of effort into coming up with prices for these large publishers and a model how to share the costs. But again, the whole effort is for 3 years and time is ticking. And now basically they need to start to embark on a long scale vision, because after 3 years, this will not be Plan S compliant anymore. And that was the whole reason for all that effort.
Okay, yeah. So there's in fact a question related to that also in the chat, that it is surprising that ANA has many member countries, but that there are special agreements to only the French institution and Max Planck community. So why is it so difficult to get all the ANA member countries support open access in ANA in the same way?
Yeah. I mean, I guess historically the way we have reached these transformative agreements that we have are, I mean, for the French, it was, again, historical relationship between EDP Sciences and the French consortium. They were already paying subscriptions, and they were very much interested in discussing with us. I mean, there was a relationship that had been going on for a long time. I think with Max Planck, they were very volunteer. They were very forward with that. With wanting to pursue this. Max Planck, they're also very heavy contributors to the journal. They've many articles published. I think there's I don't know, there's on the order of 100 articles published per year with from Max Planck. So they were very much interested in having this discussion with us and spending the time to come to an agreement and so on. I think, I mean, you know, our commercial teams have made efforts and have made, especially, you know, efforts towards the member countries, you know, because, I mean, just, I guess, for the fact that it's easier because, I mean, one of the reasons that things failed with JISC, with the UK, is that UK is not a member country. And there was the whole confusion over the page charges that were going to have to be paid. Well, either would have to have been included in the APC, which gave the impression to you know, that the APC jumped from one year to another, or else paid separately again by the authors, which you know, which was very confusing for authors. But for other member countries, because there's no page charges, so the, you know, the APC is the APC, so that, you know, that would have been you know, that would have been an easy discussion, I guess. But, you know, because, you know, I don't know. I mean, because you know, it's so much work, and it is ongoing, because there is at the end of the day not so many authors from each countries who are involved, and because there is, you know, we didn't have long-standing relationships with these people, or the power to kind of put so much resources into these kind of negotiations, as well as, you know, coming to an agreement on a fair price as well. You know, that so far that hasn't come to anything.
Okay, and as Ruta says, of course, this is only for 3 years, so this really was the effort.
Exactly.
Fact,
yeah.
Similarly
Exactly.
to that, we had a question by email from Maurizio Falanga from ESO in Bern, and he wants to ask how can ESO contribute to have ANA journal as gold open access or diamond open access, I guess, and is rather than to have bilateral agreements between the publisher and ANA member states, maybe there is another way to reach these agreements. Any thoughts, both of you?
Do you want to answer, Uta? Or?
Well, my take on that is that what the journal A&A does or does not do is in the hands, so to say, of the board of directors, where ESO is represented and can certainly strongly voice requests or wishes or opinions of the community, and that is also wanted. But then, like Anne pointed out, there's this open access working group where some of the directors meet together with some other consultants, let's say. And finally, that last move to actually define the model under which A&A can or will become open access, that signal needs to come from them. So as long as that path is not totally defined, it is difficult to say how ESO could or could not help there.
Anne, you want to add something?
No, I think.
No, it's fine. I mean, we have enough questions.
I think Uta has answered. I mean, we're working very much with ESO to you know, and you know, having the point of view of the librarian within this group is very important as well, to you know, to kind of see that aspect of things. I mean, you know, Uta is not just representing a board member, but also kind of, you know, is able to give us you know, you know, what's in the air, let's say, in that community as well. You know, what they would support, what they wouldn't support. You know, what's the preference. I guess, you know, that's why the ESO, that's where I see the ESO contribution being in that whatever path is going to be. But as Uta says, you know, we're you know, so far we've been in discussions, and at the same time things are changing, you know, alongside the discussions. You know, things are evolving, so whatever was, you know, may have been thought of as the best solution a couple of months ago may have to be rediscussed again.
And of course, we have been talking mostly about ANA for obvious reasons. But do we already know what the other astronomical journals will do, or are they going to adjust their business model? Is this known? Because this again looks to me that this is not transparent at all. We have no clue. I have no clue. Do you?
I don't. We'd love to know. I mean, you know, part of the reason that we're pushing ANA, that we're encouraging them to do this, is that, you know, to take that step, is that and a competitor could take that step tomorrow. I mean, it's not tomorrow, not, it's going to be next year, but and that would be, I think that would be a lost opportunity for ANA to be the first ones.
Okay, so we had some other questions also sent by email. One which is maybe showing indeed the issue with APCs in golden access. So it's a question by Maria Stone from the University of Turku. And she asked, how do you bring this issue of fee, I mean, APCs that you have to pay for gold open access inside the collaboration? I mean, especially if you are part of an international collaboration, you have to convince many different people maybe to come and pay something. So do you know of any strategies that worked well for doing these kind of things? Pitfalls that arise with these kind of things?
Well, I mean, generally, it doesn't work, unfortunately, on a collaborative model, the APCs. I mean, the way publishers and the way we look at things and the way publishers look at things is on the basis of the affiliation of the corresponding author. So the APC is not, meant to be, if you have 100 people, the idea is not that everybody pays 100th of the APC. I mean, normally it's the affiliation of the corresponding author, which takes an engagement to cover the APC for this article. I mean, and these are kind of the general, the generally accepted guidelines. Saying that, I mean, it could be the case where where there's an agreement within a group where someone else might have the funds to pay for it. But I would say this is relatively rare because the funders themselves generally don't agree to pay for the APC unless unless it's the person is the corresponding author. So I'd say it would be relatively rare where you'd have a case of someone's institution just having the funds to pay for an APC if they were author number 10 or whatever in the and not with no particular status in the list.
Yeah, so I guess also, sorry, no, go ahead, Uta.
No, I would assume that in some cases perhaps the share of the APCs can be modeled around page charges. I mean, the concept is not so foreign. Yes, the individual journal for which you will have to pay these fees might differ. But that might be a general guideline, how larger collaborations have handled page charges before. That would be a first way to split also APCs, I believe.
Okay, thanks. And so we have another question by email, which is that looks like a little provocative question. So what is the added value of the libraries in the loop that we have been discussing? So because we are, of course, in the era of online journals, so should not be the learned societies be negotiating the access directly with the journals? I don't know.
Well, again, I would say it's like in the era before open access, the same added value that the libraries bring. They tie things together. They have the infrastructure that has proven and is working extremely well. They keep track of evolving trends and changes that are happening in scholarly communication. They are there to even provide advice if that should be wanted to the respective researchers, and they form generally this information hub, let's say, where everybody can come, where the mediating takes place between the researchers and the publishers. Like I said before, I think it's a waste not to build on that infrastructure. Of course, everything can change. You could also say, well, an invoice can be paid by an admin assistant. Certain infrastructure can be provided by learned societies, but during the past decades, it has proven that libraries tie all this together. And I think they should continue doing that and giving that added value as they did before.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm afraid, I mean, time is up. It went so fast. I mean, it's really incredible, which shows it's of course very interesting. I still had plenty of questions, which I will have to keep for myself, but so is life. I mean, so thanks again a lot, Uta and Anne, for really great talks and answering those questions. I think this is a very important subject. And as you mentioned several times, I mean, this is really ongoing discussion, changing day to day. And so thus a community should really be following that. So thanks again, and thanks also to all the people for attending. Next week, we will have an Hypatia colloquium again with young astronomers presenting their work. And the next duologue will be on 30 March, and we'll discuss the formation of the inner Milky Way. So thank you again, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.